Fourth and Four podcast sponsored by Inside the Leather. Custom putter covers. Search Inside the Leather shop on Etsy. Use promo code podcast at checkout to save 20% on your purchase. I'm Donald Lawrence. Our guest today is Kyle Skierski, defensive analyst at the University of South Alabama.
Thanks
Welcome
for
to the podcast, Coach.
Appreciate it.
You have coached offensive line, and I'm just going to give the listeners your bio without giving them your bio. Nichols State, University of West Georgia, Millsaps, Birmingham Southern, Aoria, and was a grad assistant at TCU for the legendary Gary Patterson from 2011-2013. If you had one play to run the ball for at least 3 yards or the entire world explodes, what's your personnel, formation, and play?
So I thought about this. I am kind of a history of the game buff. Like I'm into it. And I started trying to think of a cool answer for this question. And the first thing that came to my mind was like, I could scheme up a G lead play. And I actually gave a talk at the convention years ago. I don't know what year it was. It might've been 2016. And it was on, we called it bone tight, but it was the wishbone, like Darrell Royal, Barry Switzer back in the day. But we were tight with, so 2 tight ends, so almost 32 personnel, wishbone, and we'd run duo. We carried it when I was the offensive coordinator at Millsaps. It was a short yardage goal line play, backed up. It was a 3-play package, and it was really good for us because we had a lot of equity by the middle of the season in practicing the play, and whether we carried into a game or not, people had to prepare for it because we used it so much in situational downs. So that's what I would go with. I feel pretty good about that one.
Duo is a great goal line, short yardage play. You see it every Sunday inside the 5, and most colleges run it also. I remember I had first kind of learned about it. It came on my radar. Arkansas was doing it probably about 10 years ago, and then the Cowboys really started picking up on it. And duo is those double teams, man, just generating double teams and those blocking backs without the pull, no pull power. Great play. So you think the world is not going to explode?
And I want to say this. I'm glad you said Arkansas because it made me think when we are talking. And I said wishbone. I guess I am implying under center. I'm not running it from the gun. I want to get under there, and I want the old school, almost a 4-point stance from an O line, being super low, almost like a rugby scrum. And it's a hard play to stop. When you do it like that. So.
You played O-line at UC Davis. You logged 33 consecutive starts in your career. In 2006, you won the Aggie Pride Award, which is the highest honor at UC Davis program. How'd your high school career lead you to UC Davis, and describe your playing time in college?
So Davis was awesome. It was such a great experience for me. When I was an incoming freshman in high school, I was 146 pounds. I think I was about 5'11", probably tops, and I was a safety my first year, and I slowly got a little bit bigger. I shot up somewhere between my freshman and sophomore year, and I started getting moved closer to the ball every year. Like at first I was a safety, and it was like, well, why don't you play some tight end? And then eventually I ended up at tackle. But I actually I really loved it. I had a offensive line coach I'm still close with today, who was a high school coach, but went to UC Davis. So it'll kind of bridge, how I got to Davis. He had a real conversation with me. His name was Shane Milkey, and he basically asked me if I wanted to play college football. And I'm sure there's a lot of coaches out there high school coaches that talk to their players, and everyone always says yes. No one ever says no. And, he kind of really made me dig deep as to why I wanted to play. And the end of the conversation was, well, you're not going to play college football if you're a safety. Offensive line is probably your best route. And I'm sure I was reluctant. I don't remember being, but I do remember falling in love with the position. And probably because I was better at it than some of these other things I was trying to do. I tried defensive end. I wasn't a great tight end because I didn't run fast enough, but I understood the big picture of O-line play, and I really fell in love with the technique. But that's kind of how my high school career led me to Davis. Davis was go ahead, sorry.
What were those reasons why you said you wanted to play college ball?
So my high school quarterback was Carson Palmer, was my first year. And my second year, not as big of a name. Obviously, Carson was the first pick in the draft and won the Heisman. Chris Ricks was another quarterback that ended up playing at Florida State. And I remember I didn't go to Florida State, but I went to USC when Carson was there. And I remember seeing the offensive linemen. I had one of our recruiting guys here at South Alabama measure me. So my hands are 8 3/4, and the average offensive lineman is 10 inches. My wingspan is 74.5 is my wing straight across, and the average offensive lineman is 81 3/4 in the NFL. So it was like very clear to me when I saw these guys that I didn't fit the mold, right? Receivers come in all different shapes and sizes. I think of Santana Moss was this little shifty receiver. And then when I was watching the NFL when I was young, and T.O. is this huge guy, there's all these different shapes and sizes. But an NFL left tackle is an NFL left tackle. There isn't like a short one out there, So I remember I didn't want necessarily to have the gear and the shiny stuff. It was a little bit different when I was in high school. But I remember going through summer workouts and being like, I think I've put all this work into this, and it better be worth something to me. Like it better mean something. And I think I just kind of made a conscious decision that I wanted to go play wherever that was. And like I said, I went to USC and was like, this is really cool, but I don't think I belong here. I wish I did, but I don't. So UC Davis was a Division II school at the time. I took some unofficial visits and took a few officials. My first scholarship offer, I think, was Colorado School of the Mines for $5,000. And I know I got a scholarship offer from St. Mary's. They don't even have a football team anymore. It was in Moraga, California. They were an option team and were recruiting me to play tight end. And so I remember thinking, instead of going to these shiny places, my parents weren't going to pay for me to go to USC or a school like that. Maybe I can get some money towards my education and have a chance to play. So that was kind of what motivated me, what fueled me. And Davis was awesome. I mean, I couldn't have made a better decision. It was a culture shock for me being from Southern California, because if you don't know Davis, it is about 20 minutes outside of Sacramento, an hour from San Francisco, but it is in the valley. It is a cow town. I mean, you step out of the car and it smells like cows, to put it lightly. It was a culture shock for me, but it was a great experience and unbelievable culture. My head coach, Bob Biggs, is a legend and is probably part of the reason I'm coaching today.
How do you think you logged 33 consecutive starts? How were you able to maintain your body? Was it playing through pain? Was it the prep you did in the weight room? Was it just a mindset of, my guys are counting on me, I'm always going to play?
I think some of it was luck. I think some of it was right place, right time. I know that I was competitive. I joke all the time with some of my friends. I feel like I've not lost my competitive spirit, but I don't like to get serious about things that I don't have to. Like, I feel like that was like a time long ago, and now I can, play pickup hoops and just have fun and laugh and not have to, act like I'm Tom Brady or whatever. Like, that part of my life is past. I know that's, a little bit silly, but what I'll say is I wanted to play. I wanted to be on the field. I can remember hounding my position coach. He is now the head coach at College of Idaho, Mike Morawski. He was a NFL quarterback for the Niners, and he was my O-line coach, and was awesome. But I can remember beating on his door and begging him to be in the lineup when I was a freshman. I remember the first game I ever played in was at Texas State in San Marcos. I was a freshman. I was playing tight end. The first play I was in, we scored. They didn't throw me the ball. We ran inside zone. But I can remember the want and the desire and the things that I did because I wanted to be in the field. I remember having a great year in the weight room, one of those early years. But there was some playing through pain. I know that I had a few. I was durable. I think I was fairly durable. I didn't have a lot of injuries. I had a surgery in high school. I've had like 5 surgeries in the last 3 years, but in college I didn't have any. I remember getting rolled up in one of my first starts at Weber State, and it felt like my knee was hanging there, and I don't know how, but I didn't miss any time. I had a stupid college accident where, I did something dumb and hurt my back, and thought I was going to miss a game, the Cal Poly game, my second year starting, and I didn't end up missing it. So there's some luck in there. I do think I was durable. I do think I was competitive. And I was, the term I hear today with some of the O-line guys that I really respect is like being addicted to mastering your craft. I think I had that. I think I had that when I was a player for sure.
Who's the best basketball player out of Weber State?
Damian Lillard. Come on.
Is it really?
Damian Lillard for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Me and my wife, the reason I asked that, me and my wife took a trip to Chicago a few years ago, and the Trailblazers had just got done playing the Bulls. We went to the Bulls Trailblazers game the night before, and his parents were connecting on our flight. So they were on our flight to Minnesota as we connected back to Houston, and it was fun talking to them after the game.
I like NBA hoops, so I try to get I'm a big fan of offensive linemen that play high school basketball. So I watch the NBA. I watch me some NBA playoffs. It's different being in the Central and East Coast time zones. In California, these games end. I'm from Southern California. These games end at 8:30 at the latest. And when I was in Georgia, they end at midnight. So Klay Thompson went to my high school. He went to school with my brother. So if I want to watch the Warriors play, like my next morning is shot because I have to stay up till midnight.
You got a pretty famous alumni going on at your high school.
It's a cool little community school. It hasn't been around super long, but yeah, we did. We had some good ones.
Why do you think you got the Aggie Pride Award, or what are the pillars of the Aggie Pride Award? I know it's the highest honor.
So the pillars of the
what
program
are
are trust, unity, and
specifically?
togetherness. It is I'm trying to think of the best way to. That's a great question. The Aggie Pride Award is usually given to maybe like an unsung hero type. And what's funny is I'm saying that, and there's an unsung hero award. And my head coach would be so mad at me that I couldn't define this. But it's something that's more of like a character award than based on production. And I think that, I don't think I have any regrets, but I look back at my time as a player and like, I knew that I wanted to be friends with and roll with the guys that did the things to the program that were going to help us win. And I got there and had some great examples of guys that did that. And again, I was lucky, but I was forced to play early. I wanted to play early, but I was the youngest guy out there. And my first year, my first start, my freshman year, or I was, the guy getting yelled at and the guy that was the least experienced. And as I progressed, I took all of these leaders, these guys that cared so much about the game, and I tried to help young guys in my own way. And I would say, if you said I was a jerk, that I wouldn't want to say that's putting it lightly, but I didn't hold my tongue very much. And maybe I wasn't as empathetic as I could have been looking back on it. And I can think of a couple guys specifically that maybe, I remember Davis is a big bike town. So there's more bikes on campus than students. And it's like 20,000 students. So I'm riding my bike to class one day. And there's a guy that's not going through spring ball. He's an offensive lineman, and he's from LA. I'm not going to say his name. He's in the profession. He's a scout. He's an NFL scout, and he was playing intramural softball. And we had practice that day or the day before, and he's not practicing. So I didn't say anything on my bike. I just rode to class, and the next day, in front of everybody, I peeled his face off. I mean, and I'm not saying that to brag. I probably shouldn't have did what I did. But I felt very strongly at the time that young guys needed to know that, right? That we needed to all be aligned and pointed in the same direction if we were going to win. And again, Davis had won before I got there. When I got there, they were in the middle of the longest consecutive winning season streak in college football, and we won the conference my junior year. There was lots of examples of good leadership around me, and everyone's got to do it their own way. And I was probably a little bit too, rough around the edges, but that's just the way it was, I guess.
How tall are you?
I'm 6'3" and change. Yeah.
Okay.
But short arms.
I
had, like I said, I had John Taylor measure me today because I was like, I remember people telling me I was short armed. And so, 74 and a half wing is about 7.5 inches short of the average. I would say that's a pretty big disadvantage.
So the shortest NFL lineman right
That's
now, I
that
think,
would
is
be my
Shaq
guess,
Mason
was
at
Shaq
6'1".
Mason, and he's a guard.
Yep, he's a guard. And then I think there's
And
less
a
than
freak
10.
of nature, mind you.
Yeah, he is. A
Yep.
bowling ball. And then I think there's less than 10 that are actually 6'3" or lower.
I believe that.
And so you're right there at the cutoff. You're probably the 11th best guy, but it didn't work out for you in the NFL. But you did play 3 seasons overseas in the European Federation American Football, team captain, part of a 2008 French national
That's right.
championship squad.
Man.
How'd you get that opportunity? What was that experience like?
Unbelievable experience playing in Europe. The way it came about, and so my first year over there, the NFL Europe, the World League had just folded. Just to give people kind of some perspective, and there were some spring up leagues. There's still leagues over there today that play. When I was 23, it was cool to tell people I was playing professional football because I was being paid. But not at the time. Not everybody on the roster is paid. So there's, I had Austrian teammates that had a job at a bank that they just love football. And again, if you're watching Ted Lasso or things like that, it's a little bit different in the U.S. They don't play high school football or college football. They play club. So it doesn't matter if you're good or not. You start playing when you're young, almost like a little league, and you progress. And when you get to the high school age, there is a 19 and under team. And if you get above 19, you play on the varsity team, if you will. And there is no college. So that's how the game is played over there in clubs, not universities. And not everybody's paid. So I went over there because I was passionate about wanting to study abroad when I was a student. And I never got the chance because we were always in spring football. And I was randomly, after my senior season, I was in a bar, and there was a guy named Charlie Enos. JT O'Sullivan, has some content on the internet. He runs a company called the QB School. He was the quarterback at UC Davis before I got there, and Charlie was his school record-breaking receiver. He was probably 5'6". I think he signed a contract with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and then he went to Europe. When he was home, I ran into him in a bar, and we were just talking, and he essentially got me in contact with somebody in Austria, and I played my first year over there, and I loved it. There's a coaching element to it because, it's not their game. It's obviously not like professional football like the NFL. I was being paid. I had this awesome experience, but it was really different. But I had such a good time. I was offered a contract to go to Paris my next year. And I went and we won it. And it was awesome. We played in Stade de France, which is where, if you're a soccer fan, Paris Saint-Germain plays in Stade de France. Had a couple big crowds and had some crowds in the Swiss Alps where there was like 6 people there. So just an unbelievable experience. A ton of fun. Still have some friendships over there. I had my honeymoon in Italy to take my wife over there, and still have a few relationships over there. I was supposed to, before I got this job, I was supposed to go to Denmark this summer and speak and do like some clinic stuff. I don't think I'm going to be able to go because our schedule here is different than what it was at Nicholls State. So there'll be some other time, but a great experience nonetheless.
So it would be an opportunity you'd be willing to do to go back over there and help teach the game, do clinics, coaching, all
I
that
hope
stuff.
I get to coach in the U.S. for a long time, and I don't have to, I'm not forced into retirement, but it would probably be my retirement plan for sure. I hope I get
That's
a chance
awesome.
to go back.
I have a buddy that played 4-year starting point guard at University of Colorado, and then he did 13 years over there. He did Greece, Italy, Turkey, and Germany.
I
Loved it.
I visited
Loved
every
it.
place that you named, and let me tell you this: the basketball players were making way more money than us. It's like I always make the
Yeah,
joke.
he made a
Yeah,
ton.
and when I was in France, rugby made way more. Everybody made more money than us. Like I said, it wasn't a go over there to get rich. It was an experience for me. There were some guys that were doing like indoor in the U.S. and then hoarding their money and going to Europe and just kind of going back and forth and trying to just make as much as they could. I decided that I was going to save no money and travel, and I think I went to 36 countries in 3 years. I mean, I went as many places as I could.
Have to, have to take advantage of that opportunity. I know what was interesting on some of his teams. Think of especially Turkey and Greece. There was like the league had a rule on how many international
Mhm.
players you could have. So you had to have like at least four people
That's right.
from Greece on your team, and the rest could
That's
be
right. And that's how
international.
NFL Europe was, and that's how Canadian football is. And it was no different than the league that I played in.
Your coaching career has taken you to a lot of different places, providing you with opportunities to build relationships, learn from several different coaches along the way. Who are a few of the coaches that really impacted your coaching style,
Oh
knowledge,
man,
and career?
there's so many. I'll start with high school. I had the coolest high school coaches, and I say coolest like my freshman year. I remember the coaches playing 7-on-7 with us, like at practice. I was a safety. We were running the coverage that was installed that day in the summertime, and they were playing wide receiver and quarterbacks and running the routes. And I just remember having
I would play wide receiver too if Carson Palmer
no
was throwing
doubt,
me the
no
ball.
doubt about it. And I mean, this is freshman year. This is Carson's on the varsity field. I mean, I'm telling you that these guys, um, they were everything for me, and I didn't know it at the time, but looking back on it is some of the best times of my life. Andy Sulik or Scott Britt was the head coach. Andy Sulik, he's actually the president of Santa Margarita now. My varsity coach Jim Hardigan um, was like a drill sergeant, um, and probably gave me the competitive edge that I needed to be successful in college. Shane Milkey was the offensive line coach who actually played at Davis, he works for SpaceX and is still a really good friend of mine today. The UC Davis coaches, I already mentioned Mike Morawski and Bob Biggs. Um, Dan Gazaniga is another one. He was an offensive line guy that helped me out. Um, and then probably some mentors in the profession. I'll hit on a couple in a little bit on some of the other questions, but Eddie Williamson was a big one. He was the O-line coach at TCU, and just a salt of the earth, high character guy that taught me that you could be yourself in coaching. That you didn't have to be what you thought a coach looked like or what you thought a coach should be or should say. Um, and taught me a lot about, allowed me to be around his family as a coach to see the dynamic of, moving around and raising a family while being a football coach. So those are all guys that are really important to me. Um, and there's been so many along the way. I referenced the bone type play, the offensive coordinator at Birmingham Southern. His name was Joe White. He was the head coach at Rhodes for 17 years. Helped me a ton in my career. Justin Fuente and Gary Patterson, obviously, having a chance to work with them. But just I mean, the saying, right? It takes a village. Like I've tried to take something from everybody, learn something from everybody I've been around. That I don't know if there's one person that's been more important than the next. And that's what's so cool about coaching for all of us. I mean, it's the journey. Everybody's got a different one, and there's no right or wrong path. It's everybody's path is unique to them. So
I'm gonna have to get a Ash Chu and Gary Patterson
oh
story
man,
out of you, and I'll start with one that doesn't involve you, but it actually involves Coach Gonzalez, Paul Gonzalez. Great dude,
UC
man,
UC
awesome. Every
UC
time I
Davis guy.
talk to him, he's
Oh yeah,
is he really?
oh yeah.
I didn't
You
know
should.
that, but he's a first class dude. So this is probably, oh man, 2012 maybe. I'm at a TCU practice in the spring. Coach Patterson goes absolutely bananas, and he is just ripping Coach Gonzalez's ass. And as he's jogging off the field, he looks over at me and one of our other coaches that are there and kind of winks and says, "You never know, I had my acting degree from Kansas State." or theater degree or something from Kansas State, and was just kind of like laughing under his breath after he just ripped this dude for
Oh yeah,
probably 20 minutes straight. And I'm glad Coach Gonzalez actually got to stay
me
with
too.
the new staff, with Sonny Dyke staff, and enjoy this
Uh,
season, man.
yeah, I mean
Good
he
for
is.
him.
So you should ask Paul how he got to TCU. That's a great story. But Paul was at Pacific, and I got hired. I got hired at TCU as a GA at camp. They used to call it the GA Olympics, where they'd have these guys, like the full-time coaches would suggest and recommend guys. They would bring them to camp. And then the idea was we'll hire the best coaches. We'll watch them coach and we'll hire the best coaches. Well, everyone knows, and especially, if you worked for Coach P, when camp starts and the bullets start flying, nobody is watching anything. Everybody is coaching with their head down until it's over. And when it's over, they go and shower and they go home because they got to do it again the next day. So the DFO at the time, he's now like an associate AD there. His name's Mike Sinkfield. I went to him and I said, hey, I got two guys that would be phenomenal additions to this staff. One was Hudson Fuller, and he was at Nicholls State working for Charlie Stubbs. And the other one was Paul Gonzalez, and he was at Pacific working for Keith Buckley. Keith Buckley was a coach at Davis. Paul was working for Coach Buck at Pacific in Oregon. And I said, what do I do? And I think that I had built some equity with Sink, with Mike. And he asked me if I thought these guys were the real guys. Like, he's like, your name's going to be on these guys. And I said, yeah, I think they're going to be great. And he said, have them come in a day early. And I think he might have even paid, you'd have to ask Paul, he might have even paid for Paul's plane ticket from Oregon for them to come one day early. And so Hud and Paul both came a day early to camp in 2012. My first year was 11. And they hung out with the staff the day before camp. And like I said, you get to camp and nobody, like every single full-time guy, Chad Glasgow, Clay Jennings, like all these guys had a guy that they had at camp that could potentially be hired as one of the GAs. But Hud and Paul kind of got the drop on everybody by coming a day early, and they both ended up getting hired.
That's awesome.
So, and I mean,
that's really cool.
Paul, Paul got himself hired. I mean, he just happened to, him and I were buddies. He was a baseball player when I played football, and we were friends all through college. His wife Noelle's awesome. He's got two boys. I mean, I don't get to see him as much as I'd like, but we talk football. Some of the old Davis guys, like during COVID, we had a Davis Zoom of all Davis coaches, like once a week. It was pretty awesome.
All right, you're still not going to escape.
Oh man, I got so many good ones.
Give me a couple.
I'll have to text Coach and tell him that I let one slip so he doesn't find out from somebody else. Okay, one of my favorites was, we had a receiver from, I think he was from Austin Westlake, and his name was Griffin Gilbert, and his brother was Garrett Gilbert. He went to the University of Texas, and he eventually transferred to SMU. During like my first spring, Griffin was like a pretty big recruit at the time, and his dad came to the spring game. His dad had an SMU hat on, which is a no-no. And I would say a mistake by his dad. It's a bad look, but his dad probably didn't do it on purpose. But he was sitting in the stands and he was on a BlackBerry. And his dad, I think, works in corporate business or something like that. And Coach Patterson is calling the defense and just happens to turn around and see him. And he thinks that Coach P is big now on, like, he doesn't want people filming practice. And I understand why. Like, I support why. But I don't think Griffin Gilbert's dad was filming practice. I think he was answering emails on a BlackBerry. And Coach P went postal, like, put your phone away. I mean, it was brutal. And I mean, he's screaming up into the stands at, I can't remember Mr. Gilbert's name, but it was pretty classic.
Everybody kind of stopped in the stadium.
I mean, there wasn't many people,
wonder what's
like
going on.
In the Mountain West days, that was before we hired Paul. We were in the Mountain West. Our spring game wasn't like a cultural phenomenon. Like, it was, there was probably, 1,000 people. So everybody in the stadium could hear him. At the time, the stadium wasn't even done. So it was just one side. Like, they were building the other side, and it was just one side, so all the fans were on one side. And I mean, he turned and I mean, he was giving Griffin Gilbert's dad the business. I can promise you that. Promise you that.
All right, so that's Griffin Gilbert's dad. When did he go after
Me, I'm sure he did. I know Justin Fuente got me once in the San Diego State press box. That's the one that jumps out at me. I'm trying to think if Coach P ever.
Well, you tell that one then. Everybody knows who Justin Fuente is after this past year.
Man, yeah, Coach Fuente. He's phenomenal. The best offensive coach I've ever been around, bar none. And I had this one coming. It's just one of those deals when you're in the box. I'm charting for him. It's my first year as a GA. I got a whole list of things, right, that I'm getting. And every once in a while you get into a rhythm where you start talking what you see, hey, it's a 4-2 box. It's quarters. Here comes rotation to the field. It's fire zone. And I'm writing that, as I'm talking it out to myself. I'm kind of affirming that I'm seeing it and then writing it. Well, you do that with your microphone up so nobody can hear you talk. And I had my microphone down on like a 3rd and 3. And I remember it was like counter hot protection. So we're pulling a guard, meshing with the running back across the quarterback going the same way as the guard. Quarterback kind of on the move the other way, throws the ball, and I'm reciting the play. And I can't remember if I was reciting the defense or the play, but I mean, I'm directly behind Justin Fuente, and I'm kind of half standing, and he's sitting directly below me with his hands folded. Like, he was very methodical on game day. He had a process. He was very calm. But if you've seen him coach, like, he can flip the switch and go get it. And he turned and told me to be quiet in like as loud as I've ever heard. And I was about this far. I was about 3 inches from him when he turned. And it was funny because it scared me to death because I'm brand new. I was in coaching for about 8 months before I got hired at TCU. I had no idea. Like, I have friends that, the guy that GA'd with me is now at Indiana. His dad was a coach. He'd been coaching his whole life. Like, I worked for Anheuser-Busch like a year before I started coaching. Like, I wasn't a lifelong coach. So he rips me, and I am sitting there probably shaking. And, we did win the game. And I remember like 2 drives later when everything was in hand, he didn't turn around, but he put his microphone down and he said my name. He said, Kyle. And the only reason I knew he was talking to me because I heard it in the headset. And so I put my mic down and I said, yes, sir. And he said, I'm sorry, I yelled at you. And he never turned it and acknowledged it or anything, but it was like, we're good. Like, let's just keep it moving. And so that was probably my worst one as a GA, as far as like me getting yelled at. I'm sure I had plenty of other mistakes, but as far as getting screamed at, that was the one.
Unnecessary chatter on the headsets while you're trying to call plays is the worst.
No doubt.
The worst. There's been a couple times where I've just taken mine off and just talked to the signaler. And that's one of the reasons why I call it from the field now. I've gotten a pretty good understanding of where I need to be to see what I need to see. But just sometimes you don't really want to hear everybody while you're trying to focus on 3 plays ahead.
For sure.
Who is someone outside the coaching profession that you refer to when working with your players? Okay,
so two of them that I lean on the most. I've got 2 answers for this. I got 2 guys, and then I got one other answer. So Jackie Slater and Kevin Mawai are 2 former players that are NFL Hall of Famers, and I've got relationships with both of them. One, because of when I was growing up, Matthew Slater was behind me in school. I think Matthew's the special teams captain of the Patriots. His dad played 20 years for the Rams. Matthew went to school with me, not high school. Matthew went to Servite, but we went to grade school together. And I've got a picture in my office somewhere of Jackie coming into my backyard and teaching me how to play O-line when I eventually moved in, and making me take notes on our our session in my backyard, like making me go inside and take notes, like making me. And he's a super knowledgeable guy, especially when you're talking about outside players, tackles. He was a big vertical setter. Obviously, the game has changed a bunch since he's played, but the amount of knowledge in him as a resource, it's impossible for me not to use him. I feel bad when I do use him because I feel like I only call him for his help. Kevin Mawai is a guy that I met while I was coaching, and we got to be really close just through talking technique, talking about football, and some other things, some other interests outside of sports. When Kevin was inducted, my wife and I were invited to his induction, and we went. So he's probably the best center to ever touch a football. So like those two guys, for me to have them as a resource is insane, but Kevin is a guy, like anytime I run into things, I've done it with my players. Like I've Zoomed in with my players. I've had him call when I was at Millsaps. I had him call I had a guard, and Aaron Fisher will remember this, that was taking like crazy cheap shots at guys. And Kevin was voted, one of the dirtiest players in the NFL when he, a year that he played, with the Jets. And I had Kevin talk to this guy because it was getting to be ridiculous. And I don't want the kid to lose his edge, but he's getting kicked out of games and he's causing, problems, and it's a Division III school. Like there were some other outside dynamics that played into this, but I used Kevin as a resource. Like, hey, I need you to talk to this guy. And, for him to do that and to believe in what he believes so strongly, like he is always willing to help. So those are two guys that I rely on a lot. The other one is former players. I thought this was a really cool question when I read it because when you think about outside the profession, you think of like adults, and I talk to my dad, or I talk to this sports psychologist. I think sometimes your players, when they're young, may feel a certain way and hold things back. Maybe out of respect, out of fear. There's a whole bunch of factors. I like talking to players that don't play for me anymore and saying, "Hey, I'm struggling with this. Do you remember having this issue, or what would you do if you were in this guy's shoes, or how would you coach it if you were me?" Because I think the players provide crazy perspective, and I remember feeling that way as a player. I remember feeling like people don't want to listen to me because I'm 20 years old, but I am the person with my hand in the dirt that's doing the work. Another one, I don't know these guys personally, but Duke Manyweather is a offensive line trainer. He went to Humboldt State, which is they don't have football anymore, but it was a big rival of Davis. Him and I have some mutual friends, and I've been able to attend O-line masterminds, which is like a big, like a symposium every year where a bunch of players go. I, for the last 2 years, have gone to ask offensive linemen questions, the guys that are in the NFL. Like, it is a great resource to be able to ask Ryan Jensen, who's Tom Brady's center, when they ask him to back block a 3 technique, how he does it and what doesn't work for him. And everyone is built different. It's not you can't just take what Ryan Jensen says and apply it to your players, but it is a great resource to hear perspective from different players, especially ones that are doing it at a high level, or ones that you coach that know that they understand your language and they know the techniques that you've taught over the years.
Last I checked, Kevin Mawai was coaching on Herm Edwards' staff before it disbanded. That's accurate,
no,
right?
So he was with Herm up until about COVID, and he got hired by the Indianapolis Colts with Frank Reich, who I think is a great friend of his. He was there all the way up until this last season, and he did get out of coaching. He actually just got hired as the head coach at Lipscomb Academy. So I guess that's kind of a unfair answer because he is the current head coach at Lipscomb Academy in Nashville.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Who's the best player you ever coached against?
Oh, man. So I think when I was a GA, I think Tyler Lockett at Kansas State and Tavon Austin at West Virginia. I think those two were by far head and shoulders above the rest. I could be forgetting somebody. It's weird because I went through this and I had a lot of wideouts. As a player, TCU, we played TCU just coincidentally They had a defensive end named Tommy Blake. His backup was Jerry Hughes, but he wasn't good enough yet when I played him. Jerry was a first-round draft pick, but he wasn't a dude when I played him. He came in garbage minutes. There was a guy named Chris Gokong at Cal Poly that played in the NFL that was probably the best, most elite pass rusher besides Tommy Blake. And then when I was a player, one in high school, one in college, Davis played Northern Colorado, and Vincent Jackson was the old wideout for Tampa Bay. He's passed, but I think he had us for like 11 catches, 260, and 3 touchdowns. I mean, that was insane. And then Carson's senior year, I was a freshman. I got to dress for the game and watch it from the sidelines. Carson played against we played against Tustin in the state finals, Tustin High School, and Deshaun Foster played at running back at UCLA, and he was a part of the Panthers team that lost to the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Deshaun had 363 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns, and they lost. It was a wing tee offense, and everybody knew he was getting the ball. Like, everybody knew, and nobody could stop him. And Carson was that good. I mean, I don't know what Carson's numbers were that night, but it was insane.
Tyler Lockett, to me, is one of the most underrated collegiate and NFL players by far.
No disagreement.
That dude's a stud.
Awesome. And K-State always has one. You know, Jordy Nelson, Darren Sproles. They always have a guy. This year they had
that running back they had this year. We played him. Deuce Vaughn was at Cedar Ridge in Austin. And we played them in the playoffs in 2018 in the first round.
Always have one. And I remember on that, when we played them, it was obviously Coach Snyder. And Coach P played at K-State, so a lot of history. I remember when they hired the guy from North Dakota State, I thought it was the best hire in the cycle. I don't know the guy personally, but I played against North Dakota State at Davis, like what they are, who they are, what their DNA is, to get him to K-State. To me is genius. I mean, I think that's such a good hire.
That's something that you don't see enough of, in my opinion. And let's go ahead and take it there. Ask you why you have a guy that had just years longevity of success at that level before getting an opportunity at really probably one of the lower tier, or viewed as one of the lower tier schools within that conference. Why are head guys with that kind of success year in, year out not getting the opportunities to bump up, and the hot coordinators are?
I don't know. I think it's a great question. If I had an answer, I mean, holy cow! Here's what I know, and this isn't a shot at anybody. And like I said, I don't even know the Kansas State guy, but I don't always think that. I think that that's a weird hiring prowess that we use in college football. Like, if somebody's a good offensive coordinator, it means they're going to be a good head coach, where like a leadership is clearly a skill that has to be built. It has to be refined. And just because you're good at calling plays or you're good at drawing scheme, it doesn't mean that you're a good manager of people. Why it's that way, I don't know, but it's been that way for a long time. I know that if you got the top defense in college football, or you lead the country in offense, you got a good chance of getting a job. I know that.
Right. Absolutely. What's been the most difficult struggle in your coaching career?
I think for me, it's what's funny for me is it wasn't a problem at first. My wife is a nurse, so my wife's got a job I think we've moved. Moving is my answer. I think this is move number 8 coming to Mobile, and my wife and kids are currently still in Louisiana. But I've been in Mississippi and Alabama twice, and I've been in 6 states total since I started coaching. And moving at first, I remember when I moved from Jackson, Mississippi to Fort Worth, Texas, I had a girlfriend who's now my wife. I put everything I could in my car and I drove, and it was easy. And then I got married, and an apartment that I shared with Trey Haverty, actually. And Jackson, I moved out. I left a bed. The guy that came in after me bought the bed. And then when I moved into TCU, I had an apartment with my girlfriend, fiance, and then wife. And then we had to move in. It got a little bit harder. And then I had, my first daughter, and then I had my second, pulling them out of school. Like, after I made my first move with kids, I think I was back in Jackson. My daughters were born in Jackson, and I went to Carrollton, to Georgia. And that move wasn't that bad. Like, we had kids, we moved, whatever. And then when I moved from Georgia, I had to pull my daughter out of kindergarten. And that was like, whoa. That one hurt me, or seeing her hurt or be sad was tough for me. But I will say this, like, that's definitely the hardest part for me thus far. But my kids are resilient, and I think that is, I don't want to develop a habit of moving all over the country and pulling them out of school. Don't get me wrong. It's not what I want to do, but my daughters are like best friends, and my oldest is a little bit shy and has like continuously got better at meeting people because she's been put in situations where she has to. So I guess that's the good and the bad.
Moving is terrible. The packing, the unpacking, the organization of all of it. And you always seem to have more stuff. And if your wife is anything like mine, I always want to throw everything away. And just, if we need it again, we'll get a new one. And she wants to make sure everything is packed. And when we unpack and something's not there, I get accused of throwing it away, even though she didn't see it.
My wife is a rock star. She has packed every house and moved every house by herself. I have never used movers. We did one time. We used movers in Chicago. But she does it all. And to be honest, she is, we both kind of have like hoarder tendencies, but we both purge everything when we move. So it's been really good. And again, I hate doing it. I hate moving because I know, like, we were in Louisiana for 14 months. And I know that she's overwhelmed because she's got to pack up a house and move again. So that's definitely the biggest struggle.
My wife is actually a pediatric ICU nurse.
Oh, nice.
How about yours?
So God, I wish I could answer this question. I don't even know how to answer this. She's done everything. She's like a resource nurse. So she's worked in the hospital on like oncology, med surg, telemetry. She's worked in the OR. She doesn't do anything like NICU. She doesn't do anything with babies, but she would always, she liked the idea of not taking insurance, right? Like being on my insurance. They call it PRN. I don't know if you know what that is. I didn't know what it was until she told me. And she basically picks her schedule. So she's not considered a full-time employee, even though she can work 55 hours in a week or whatever it is. They just say you're not full-time because you're not on insurance, but she does get to pick her schedule. She also can choose not to work. And with football coaches, we have like a month off in July, right? So she started in hospitals. When we moved to Carrollton, she did home health, which was through a pandemic, which was crazy for her. And she just got a job working from home, and she's doing like nurse case management. She's loving it. So that's been great.
Yeah, nurses, I can tell you this about my wife, keep wins and losses in perspective. Especially pediatric ICU at Texas Children's in Houston.
I can't imagine.
She's dealing with a 6-year-old cancer patient, an 8-year-old kid that was physically abused by stepdad, whatever, so she keeps her stress at her job is way higher than my stress at my job.
No
and
doubt
she
about
handles it way better than me. For sure. All right, man. We're coming down to the end. 2 minutes left on the clock. You have no timeouts. But now you have to get the first down. The world's not going to end, but you got to get an extra yard. You're down 5 on the 50. It's 4th and 4. What's your thought process, personnel, formation, play? Get the first down, keep chains moving, go win the game.
Yeah. So I think my thought process, because there wasn't a time on this deal, or if the clock was running or not, the first thing I would do is, if the clock was stopped, is I would try to use cadence and try to get a free first down in there, and especially if you could get it off of tempo. If you could somehow freeze it and get a new set of downs. But obviously, personnel, if we're in situational football and it's 2 minute, I'm hoping that my best players in the field are 10 personnel. And, depending on what their tendencies are, I'm sure mesh is a popular one out there in Texas. I'm sure that people won't hate that call, but, ball control for me, I'm big with protection. So 5-man protection doesn't scare me. But obviously whatever we can do to get our best ball play or get our best player the ball on 4th and 4 is what I want to do. You know, there's a lot in that. That's a loaded question in there. Who do I have at quarterback? I know that an old Langham Creek, if I had Nico Jonta at quarterback, I might be running the rock a little bit.
The Millsaps, Nico Jonta.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll tell you this about Nico Jonta. He won a big, big game for us as a backup quarterback. So
I remember.
he was the backup to a guy that actually went to Kansas State, actually signed with Kansas State.
I think Fish put me on him, if I'm not mistaken. And I can't remember who you played, but that was a lot of his film.
Cy Ranch.
It was Ranch.
Cy Ranch. Yep.
Cy
Ranch was really good. A couple years coming off state championship.
I could have the wrong Cy.
And
there's a head coach. I think it's Ranch. It could be another one, but he's from Nebraska. Am I right?
So that's Cy Ridge.
Okay, that's what I thought. He was a great dude. I remember
Coach Shanley over at Ridge. Yeah, he is a cool dude. He was the defensive coordinator at Ranch at the time.
Okay.
And he was a good player at Nebraska, and they had good players at Cy Ranch. And when we beat those guys, it was always a good feeling because he was quality and their players were quality.
He is. He's a good football coach. I miss recruiting Houston. That was a very fun thing that I did not anticipate when they told me in Jackson, Mississippi, that on the bye weeks I was flying to Houston and I was going to recruit there for a week and I'd be going there 4 times a year. And I wasn't super fired up about it. And I loved it. It was, especially spending the time at TCU and knowing some of the coaches, is getting to know them better was awesome.
Well, since you brought it up, we got Fish. Tell us a good Fish story. My favorite story from the head coach at Millsaps directly was when he got his butt chewed for not having ink in the printer, and that basically that guy told us, or told me, that Fish's only job was to make sure ink was in the printer and nothing else really mattered that he did.
I'm trying to think of a good Fish story. There's so many good memories from Millsaps. I'm trying to think.
Were you there with the 13 lateral game against Trinity?
No, I got there the year after. My first college job was the year after that. I think it was the year before. It was 1 year prior or 2 years prior to when I got there. But it was obvious. I mean, I feel like it was 1 year prior because of how much everybody talked about it. I mean, it won an SB that year, and
it won an SB.
It was a big deal. It was a gut wrenching loss for them. But I was there for 1 year in 2010. Went to TCU for 3. Won a couple other places, and then I got hired back to call the plays in 16. And I want to say Fisher was there. I think he was there before I was. I think he was already hired, and him and I crossed over for a year, and then he got the job at Langham. So, and so I'm trying to think if there's any other players that I signed. I know I signed Nick out of Langham because of Fish's help. But I just recruiting Houston's awesome. I miss that Mexican food. I'll tell you that. Don't tell anybody out here in Alabama because they'll get mad at me, but they think they got good Mexican food out here, and boy, are they mistaken.
What?
Yeah.
Better than come on.
I won't even have that argument with them.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's that's foolish if you do.
To say the least.
All right, man. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate you doing this from the office. I know it wasn't easy. Both of us got young kids, kind of putting this together. And I know you said you guys get rocking and rolling pretty early in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
So this was great, man. You did a hell of a job. How can listeners find you on social media? Follow the football program.
So I'm gonna check my Twitter so I don't screw this up for people. My Twitter is, I think it's Coach K _ Skierski, and I'll spell Skierski. So Coach K _ Skierski, SKIERSKI is my Twitter. My Instagram is Coach _ Skierski 77. So I'll say it one more time. My Instagram is Coach _ Skierski, SKIERSKI 77. Those are the two main ones that I use. I've had guys reach out, and our head coach here, Kane Womack, he's phenomenal. He is an open book as far as letting people in the community come watch practice, come clinic. We just had a clinic where we opened our doors to any high school coach that wanted to come. So you can reach out to me if you'd like. And like I said, if I can help anybody, I'm in this for that. I'm in this for being able to develop young men, and us as coaches getting together and learning is all the better.
We might take you up on that, man.
I'm
you
serious.
gotta have us. I'd love to see that office.
Anytime. Dude, so I share an office. You can't see the desk right here, but our senior offense, there's only two analysts. Me and the offensive guy is Doug Roos. He was the offensive coordinator at Tulane and Georgia Southern, and he's not here right now, so I'm not bothering him. So I had to have this interview when he wasn't sitting in his chair.
Are those binders and books in the background? Are those actually
yours,
or are they already in the office?
No, these are me. Yeah.
Okay. What about all those armors, those body armors back there?
Those are actually from Coach Womack's office. Don't tell anybody that. That's. I went in there and grabbed a couple when he was out of there.
No worries, man. All right, thanks again, Coach. You can find me on Twitter at Coach Lawrence FB, as in football. Search 4th and 4 podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon, and YouTube. Appreciate your time, Coach.
Appreciate y'all.
I hope to hear from you again soon, dude. Let's set something up.
Sure.
All right, brother.
Later.